It's winter. You have an accident. And because of the forgetting curve, you'll forget 50% of all the important details in just 2 hours. You'll forget 70% in 24 hours. Sure, there's so much happening, so do yourself a favor and do me a favor, write it all down. Call me Joe Stanley.
My grandfather used to say, look and listen before you speak. And there was good reason for that. He figured out rapidly that a lot of people aren't really giving you what is going on, and it may take a while for you to figure it out. That's kind of like how the court system works. If you're not watching and paying attention, it could certainly inundate you. So how does that translate into bad things happen to good people every day? Well, the law certainly is meant to help them, but this podcast is making sure you know your rights if they do. I'm attorney Joe Stanley, and welcome to That's the Law. Now stay with me because the story gets really interesting eventually. Now the story starts a long time ago, far away. Me, where I was growing up, I grew up here in central New York. My parents moved here from the coal mines of Pennsylvania and set up and became lifelong residents. My father was the business agent for the union in General Electric, and he was responsible for helping up to 20,000 people back in the day when that was a huge part of central New York. And as I grew up here, you know, it was a different place and a different time. And, you know, who shapes you? Well, your teachers, sometimes good, sometimes bad. The adults you deal with, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I had a lot of people who always came up and showed me the right way to go and the right way to do things. The hard work, pay attention, always do the best that you can, because I think that's critical. And I tried to do that in almost everything I did. Can't say absolutely everything because, you know, nobody's perfect, even though we think we are. And as I grew up, I never would imagine that I was going to be a lawyer, even though my father, you know, had a job that dealt with people all the time. I wasn't that particularly interested in people. I wanted to be a scientist. I loved weather. In fact, one of my weather heroes was Stormy Meredith from Channel 9. I remember, and I still to this day, weather is one of my major hobbies. I still have a weather station. I love geology. So but I thank Channel 9 and Stormy Meredith for making the weather interesting and fascinating, at least to me. He brought a different perspective, and it's something that I have, you know, to this day. I still look at the weather and listen to the weather. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting thing. And so how did I end up being a lawyer? You're probably wondering, how did a kid who loved the weather and rocks, and the rocks were not in my head, believe it or not, the rocks were somewhere else, how did I become a lawyer? And that is something that we can talk about in a little bit. How did I become a lawyer? Well, that's a story. As I grew up and went to CBA in high school, again, I was interested in science more than in law. And in fact, I went to college, the Environmental College of Science and Forestry. I had a science degree, and I got a master's in ecology from Binghamton State University. And in fact, I was about to go on into the world and get a PhD in a topic that I hadn't really figured out yet. But then I said, well, we're in the middle of a Great Recession. This was the first Great Recession, by the way. That's multiples to follow. I think it would have been 1979, but the first of many, as it turned out. You know, when you live through it, you think it's the worst. And can it get any worse? It did. So I, on a lark, went and took the LSAT exam without even reading the manual about how to test. I had to read the instructions. You're not supposed to do that, by the way. But I took the test and I actually did pretty well. And, I started to investigate. Well, I did well. How did I do so well when I really didn't even have any idea what I was doing? And then so I investigated it and I said, well, maybe this is something maybe I want to try. And so I did. I said, I'm going to go. I got into multiple places, but I stayed at home at Syracuse. And I learned a lot about the law. I graduated first in my class because it's one of those things that you were always taught to work as hard as you could possibly work and do the best you could. And that included school. And that's carried over with me to today. You want to know the best part about what's going to happen now that I graduated from law school? How did I end up being this guy doing podcasts about personal injury or whatever? How did that happen? I don't know. I wonder how did that happen? People ask me all the time. And sometimes fate is more important than intentions. And how did it end up? Well, it ended up when I graduated from law school, I was convinced I still wanted to do something with science until I found out that the law and science and the type of law that dealt with science was the most incredibly boring law that there was, at least to me. And for me, it required me for new challenges every day, so to speak, and new things to learn. And so I got involved with doing litigation on the personal injury side, initially for a little while as a defense lawyer, and figured out, well, I have to learn something every day. I have to learn something new every day about a topic that I didn't know anything about. And learning things and being skillful at that was important to me, and it was a challenge. And so that's how I ended up doing litigation and becoming a personal injury lawyer. How about that? It turned out to be something that I loved, as it turned out. And I really had no idea until I started doing it. So that's something I guess a lot of us out there might not know, that you got to where you wanted to be until you get there. And at least for me, that's how it was. Once I started, because of all of these experiences, you learn the challenges of personal injury. And you learn the challenges of handling it from the start. Now, I've been doing this a long time. And understanding how people react to having a serious personal injury is not something you're born with. And I think that is a concept that's evolving every day. And I'm learning every day how important these kind of events are to people, how life-changing they are, and how it is important for any lawyer who is handling these kind of cases to understand your client. I think it's important to understand the client, whether he's got a neck injury, a back injury. Can he work? How is his family related and relying on him? How does his own personality and personal experiences equip them or do not equip them to handle the situation? And what are their future prospects given what has happened to them? And it goes on and on. And that's where the bad things happen to good people situation comes in. I can't, tell you the thousands of people I've represented over the years. The vast majority of them would have traded anything not to be in the situation they were in. Absolutely. All the money in the world, that kind of thing, I think it's true. I personally, digress a little bit. I was in a car crash. It wasn't my fault. I was leaving work, and surprisingly, or not surprisingly, another lawyer turned right in front of me and hit me head on in downtown Syracuse. He didn't know where he was going. guess what? He was looking at his GPS, and totaled both our cars, and and so it gave me a perspective. I got up and thought, oh, I'm indestructible. I can walk away with this, but not so much. I ended up, and I still sit here today. My neck hurts from this accident. Still get treatment for it. And it was 7-8 years ago now. But the biggest thing, and this is what I always ask clients this. The biggest thing I suffered as a result of this accident is I can't play basketball anymore. I had to quit playing basketball, and I loved it. It was something I just loved to do, even at how old I was. It was great. We just get out there and did it. I couldn't do it anymore. And I always ask clients this: what's the one thing that you lost because of this accident? So bad things happen to good people, and they'll tell you, that gives you a great insight of what somebody's like when they tell you what they lost. It wasn't that they can't work anymore, because they probably can still work, but is it they can't play with their grandkids or whatever it is? What was the most important thing to them that they lost? So you have bad things happen to good people. And how do you get them the maximum? Does it happen magically? No, it doesn't happen magically. The insurance companies, we talk about them all the time being bullies. And really, I guess that's how they operate from an individual perspective. But from their perspective, it's a dollar and cents proposition. They are in the business of not paying claims, period. They're in the business of making a profit, okay? And we see it today in the situations where they can't make profits anymore, for insuring houses in Florida or fires in California, where they can't make a profit anymore. They get out. So that's not that they raise their rates. They just decide, well, this is not profitable for us anymore. We have to make so much money. So that's the way it is. That's capitalism. So if you're hurt because of somebody else's conduct, the insurance companies are not going to just pay you because you're hurt or that you say these things have happened to you. They have specific policies and procedures that they have developed over the years and have been enhanced by computers and now AI that are in place that they believe will pay the least possible and make them the most profitable. What is it? Okay, it's no pay. We pay very little. You're not really hurt. All of your injuries are pre-existing. That's a great one. We could spend a whole podcast on that, and that's something that I don't think most people appreciate, what that word pre-existing means. It means a lot to the insurance company and the doctors they hire, because the odds are if you were ever involved in one of these, they would send you to somebody who would say that some, all, or most of your injuries were pre-existing and were not caused by this negligent person who harmed you. So I can say sometimes when I first started, I couldn't believe how the insurance companies operated. But now it's expected. In fact, there's several insurance companies that operate in such a manner that we just don't deal with them, that we are forced to litigate with them because they have a business model that just is not reasonable or fair, or one that could even arguably say is reasonable or fair. Because of that, we have a Stanley system, and we talked about the insurance companies, but you have to have a system of how you're going to deal with them And I already gave you a big clue. On one group, you have to sue them, or they just won't make any reasonable offer. And the other group is that you can deal with them in a way that sometimes they will come to a settlement that is the best under the circumstances, which again, in future podcasts we'll talk about. The maximum award in every case is dependent on so many factors. We won't talk about those now, but suffice it to say that it is a complicated scenario. But working with these two groups of categories, you always start in the same way. And the same way is to investigate and evaluate and determine what all the facts of the case are. In other words, every case, whether you're going to litigate it or try to settle it, or you know you're going to have to try it, should all be handled the same way. You handle them as if they were going to go to trial to the very end. And the reason you do that is because you get information that helps you put forward the most credible and intimidating information to the insurance companies such that they know you are prepared and know that you are willing to go to the mat to get the maximum award in that situation. And if you don't do that, by the way, if you don't prepare every case as if it was going to go to a final jury trial, then you're going to leave some information aside that might end up being very important that you didn't even know about. So that's the Stanley system, in the sense is that you have to investigate, evaluate, and then use your experts that you have available to you, depending on the case, to again prepare that case as if it was going to trial. And then you present that information to the insurance companies from a position of power, from a position of far more information that they have, far more information that they want to pay for. Because, if you show them that you've done all this work and you have all this information and you have all of these capabilities, and that if they want to contest what you have, they have to go out and do it all themselves, hire all these people themselves. And at some point, the people who are handling these claims are going to say, well, we don't want to deal with this person because we could get rid of him and pay him off, so to speak, pay him the maximum, and deal with the other ones that aren't nearly as problematic. Because they're people, the people who are handling it are people. I mean, they have their programs, they're told how to operate. But within those programs, they still have to resolve cases. And I can tell you, they have their list of people they know who are always prepared and who are always willing to go to the mat. And they are treated far differently than those who they know don't do anything. In fact, if you're in that list, you're probably at the bottom of the pile that is so big that they may never find you. And so I think that's incredibly important, how the Stanley system works. And by the way, intricate to all of this is that the all of us principle. I know you've heard somebody say that. It could not have been me, but it might have been me. I mean, when we work together, we win. It's not just us as lawyers. It's incredibly important that you become part of the team and understand the process. I've always been a big advocate of knowledge and learning because it's incredibly important for the client to understand and be part of the team so he can participate in providing that leverage, that perspective, that not only are the lawyers willing and ready and able to go forward, but the client is well prepared and he's understanding and he's willing and ready to go forward because he knows he is justified in pursuing the claims that he is making. And I think if you have all of that together, it makes a really, really big difference. Again, it comes down to my grandfather said, if you look and listen and you figure everything out, and then you work hard once you figure out where everything is going, hopefully that will lead to a good result. And we have many opportunities to talk about how, the legal system is not foolproof. And there's no guarantee of a win at any stage of the system. A settlement's a settlement, but a trial is a trial that goes to the end, and there's no guarantee of what the outcome is. That's for both sides, and that's what makes our system great. So we have an example. I have a client, and Ramiza Sabanek. She said a testimonial, but she was part of the team. And she said that, it was nice for her. She said Stanley Law was outstanding. And she loved our paralegal Connor, who was a great, great worker. He understands our system. He went above and beyond in terms of helping her, helping the case be prepared, and helping the lawyers involved in putting this case forward. And he also has an underlying perspective of what I always talked about, is that he tries to figure out where the clients are coming from. And I think anybody appreciates that, but especially anybody who is injured in an accident appreciates someone trying to understand where they're coming from. Not just treating them as a number, but understanding, oh my God, yes, that's terrible, and I would never want to be in your situation. Having that empathy, it's not sympathy, it's empathy, is incredibly important in what we do, because I think a lot of our clients are on their own, so to speak. And, I've said this, and I've said it multiple times, it says attorney and counselors of law on the name tag. I think a lot of the time it's more counselors than attorney for the people that we represent, because for some, we are the only people that they can tell their story to, who have empathy and understand what they're going through because of their own life situations. And you can imagine to be in that scenario when you are someone's lifeline, so to speak, when something bad has happened to a good person and you're their lifeline. I think that's an incredibly important thing. And when I wake up and I think back of all the people I've helped, I think it's really nice to know that you've helped them both on a counselor part, but also on a financial part. So, in closing, this is our first podcast. Hopefully, someone will listen to it and enjoy it. If you like my discussions, some people might say ramblings, you can see us on the multiple segments across radio and TV in upstate New York, where we get questions and we have a lot of banter. We have fun, and making the law fun sometimes is very important. So it's not so serious all the time. Even though I look very serious, I'm not that serious all the time. Believe it or not, I am not that serious all the time. So. But so if you like us, if you're interested, let us know that you like the podcast. You can go to StanleyLawOffices.com. You could, we're on every digital platform there is, whose names I sometimes, really, there's just so many of them out there that, the world has become a picture to everybody. Me, I like sounds, but all right, most of us like pictures. But look for us, make comments, say hello. And don't be afraid to ask questions. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Nobody should have to go it alone. And so until we talk again, take care of each other, look out for one another, and justice is for everyone, because that's the law. You're injured, a serious injury. You need to make an important decision. Are you going to just settle for some or do what smart people do? Get the maximum. We're Stanley Law, the maximum award people.
What does striving for the maximum award for each and every client mean in practical terms? And how is your approach different, Joe, from other firms?
Every case has an optimum that you hope to get in, depending on how much insurance there is, how hurt the person is, their age and background. Those things all come together to determine what is the optimum recovery. Now, the optimum recovery may be more work than getting a lesser amount. And so I think it's one of those things we work to get our client the best amount. And in some situations, we have to do a lot more work, but it means a little bit means a lot to our clients. And it's their only one chance for whatever they have to get. For us, there's going to be other clients, but for every client, we have to look at it. This is their opportunity. This is what happened to them. And so it's incredibly important that you focus on what the best possible outcome is for them under those circumstances. Stanley Law, the maximum award people.